welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today on the lead vocalist from Hericane Alice. Bruce, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good, doing good. Glad we could do this. We've been trying to get back and forth. You're a busy, busy guy, and it's been a while since anyone's heard anything from you guys.
I know. Life goes on, man. You know what I mean? Somebody made a comment. We put out a record a couple of years ago, and they're like, "It's only taking them 30 years to put out another record. Wait, I can't wait for the next one."
Well, I was thinking I'm looking forward to 2050 for the next one. That would be
Yeah,
30
right.
years.
No, it's kind of like a thing. Like life got in the way. Like John Lennon said, "Life's what happened. Life is what happens while you're making other plans." So
Pretty much, pretty much. But you
yeah,
guys came at a time where right at the end where the rug got taken out. So it put you in a weird spot to begin with.
yeah,
You weren't established enough where you could kind of lay the groundwork more. You know what I mean? Some of the
yeah.
bands had a couple albums in.
We were just like getting a seat at the table, so to speak, when the bottom kind of dropped out, and all of a sudden everything that I trained to be like, which is a rock and roll guy having fun and a big live arena thing, was, oh, that's horrible, blasé. And I'm sure you've talked to all the other artists in the 80s genre. It's like when the 90s hit, it was like, oh my God, it's over. It was a little bit of being like Elvis when the Beatles got there.
It is, but a lot of people had. You think I don't like to lump it together because I talked to a lot of people from a lot of different genres for that time period. Because even if
Yeah,
you were like in a AOR rock band or a progressive band, grunge
yeah,
became a thing for everybody. So I
yeah.
mean, 80s for you, but like it wiped out, changed for everybody at one point. Where a lot of
Right.
the soft rock bands weren't cool anymore. It
Yeah,
always every 10 it's like a cycle. Every 10 years, I've noticed it kind of feels like every
sure.
music kind of goes through. But what everybody did with after it has always been the most interesting part of how people handled it
Yeah.
and recovered from it. Because we're
Right.
still talking, so everybody recovered somehow. They just found a new avenue of life.
Yeah, it is weird. I mean, now that you have a few decades under your belt to look at, like, and then interestingly, the longevity of the artists of each of those decades.
Hmm.
I mean, where are those 2000s artists? I mean, and where are the 90s or the 90s artists? I love all those cats, man. I really
Yeah,
did dig it. But I don't know. Well, a lot of them are gone now. We've lost a
yeah,
lot of them. But
I agree.
nothing really to like be like as hugely iconic as like the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin or all those bands that I came up on,
Yeah, yeah.
AC/DC. You know what I mean? It's like
I don't
that
think
those
there's going to be a Monsters of Grunge boat trip for people to
yeah.
tour on and see, like,
Well, there might be. I don't know,
Well,
but
you're right. Just to prove me wrong, but I'm saying because each of those bands had some good songs, and I'm like, not going to be it because
yeah,
there's some of the music I like. But I don't think also that they weren't even around long enough to establish
yeah,
themselves. Like, or at least rock and the '80s metal had a longevity. It grew from the '70s, and it had
yeah.
legs.
It
Grunge thing only had
was.
like baby steps, and then it was gone again.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, I really liked it. Some of I mean, like, Nirvana was amazing. I mean, like Beatles amazing, really, but
Yeah,
not like Beatles prolific as far as how much is out there and how huge the Beatles have become. And then
but
there's always the thing of like, well, okay, but the Beatles have been played over and over and over and over again. It's like, and they were in at such like an infantile state of the music business relative to now, where
right.
there's so many more artists, and as that scale of artists,
But
like
they
they're
weren't
now
together that very long either,
million
though.
artists.
The recording wasn't very long either. What 6 years that they actually
Yeah, it
recorded
was
albums? The
64
Beatles,
to 69. I mean, it was or
yeah,
70. Yeah. And
it's
it's
pretty
like,
short. That's the same
yeah.
length of most
So,
bands. That's
but I mean, now it's like, and in those days, there were only a couple of cool ass recording studios in the world, and they were in them. But now it's like every kid's got one on his phone,
Yep,
and there are 7 billion recording artists as opposed to like this many back in those days.
yeah.
So they took a higher place. So maybe
It
that's why.
changed, and it did. It changed. Like you said earlier, say like, and people have heard me say this before. Like when I was in college, like I said, 89, 90, which your album was what 92, right? Not 92, 90 also. It
Yeah,
was the same time think about when Mac came out and Apple and the home recording and everything. So I got my
yeah.
degree in recording and in shooting video and editing. And
Oh,
then a
cool.
computer came out. Yeah, but then a computer came out, and everyone's like, I can do this on my computer. But just like
Yeah,
grunge came, Apple came and hit me because it changed the dynamic of my career.
yeah, absolutely.
Because people felt like they could do everything differently. Now, over time, we've learned that you can't replicate drums. You need to go to studio. There's certain things you need to do. you know.
I was just actually, in fact, the reason I thought I was late, but I guess I wasn't. But I was just
No.
talking to Ian Mayo, the original bass player for Hericane Alice,
Mhm.
and he's been working in audio for the last how many ever decades, and he just bought all these killer drum mics and a killer drum set, and he's got a home studio, and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know, I'm just sick of using triggers, and I want to get back to it. And we had this discussion about that thing of like our drummer Jackie and Ian. I mean, they were just so dynamic and powerful and every little nuance and every little upbeat. And when we just get in a room together, the rhythm section was so powerful that, I mean, and you have this thing where you have this intuitive sense where, I mean, it was just, it's like something you don't experience when you're just like working with loops and stuff like that. I heard Joni Mitchell say, like, you know, she had some producer that was like, you know, we can do your record for this much money, I'll save you this much money, and we're just going to do, you know, do stuff, you know, in the box. And she's like, music is, you know, a bunch of people in a room creating music together.
Mhm.
And it's like, you know, that's the thing that's been lost. I mean, you know, God save us from the future with AI and all, and, you know, current worries, you know.
COVID came at a weird time. COVID allowed a couple of things to happen. The good
Yeah.
side for music is it allowed some downtime and creativity. We'll talk
Mhm.
about the bad side in a minute, but allowed a lot of artists that have been on the road. They've gone the ups and downs in the 80s, and they hit the grunge, and they went back together, and they touring rock has been picking up a little bit, especially bands from the 70s, the 80s,
Yeah.
and early 90s. Um, but a lot of people hadn't been home. A lot of artists hadn't been home for long periods of time or recorded. Some of
Yeah.
these bands have recorded some of the best albums they've done in their lives. They've had the time to sit down and write the best albums ever. A lot of great rock albums came out from
You
bands
know,
from the late 80s and 90s because
there's
of
a
this
thing
time.
about that. And I just got done reading Ted Templeman's biography,
That
you
was a
know.
good book. I read that. It's a good book.
Did you read that?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. And you know how Van Halen could just come in there with nothing and then they just pick up this riff and they'd write the album and record it in 2 weeks.
Mm.
Wow, that's great. They just came off the road and they're just like road warriors. But then, you know, like when I just did my last record, it's just so great to like take it, and I'm a runner, so it's like, you know, I'd like work on I worked on it for a couple of years, and it's like you have one iteration of the song, and then you're out there and you're like, when I'm running, I just like be thinking about the song, and all of a sudden oh, I've got this new part, you know, and you just like run it through your head and be able to go back and change it and make it better, make it better, make it better, and like just keep boiling it and keep taking the cream, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I want to say that, though, is it's good to have a lot of time. Sometimes too much time is not good. And that's Chinese democracy, where you get to the point where I think Axel is just had the pressure and he's questioning himself, where you're like, what is the next thing? When do you stop? When do you just stop, move
yeah,
on? But Van Halen's a good example, just like the Beatles. They were very prolific, but they had their rehearsals. Like Van Halen could do like, I don't know, couple hundred cover songs. Eddie had more riffs ever. Sometimes the riffs
yeah,
would come back in other songs, and they toured like anything. So by the time they came in for those albums,
yeah.
they were so well rehearsed. They had so many riffs.
They were
They
like
had so
racers.
many ideas. They
Yeah,
just had it. The songs were just like dripping out of them. So for them to
yeah,
try one thing, another thing came out because they were so primed to do it. It made sense. Just
yeah.
like the Beatles were so, what, 5 nights a week they're playing, or 7 nights a week, 5 sets a night or something. Like you were
Right.
so much for doing that. And that's where most bands are when they come in the very beginning. You get the
Yeah,
sophomore album, you know, the second, third album on the tour is usually when it starts to hurt the guys because of time, break, or whatever, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But that
Well, that's the
album, but
thing of just being in perfect shape. If you're an athlete, and that's what, you know, you get yourself in fighting shape, and you know that's what those bands did. And yeah, we got all the music to look at to go, yep, they were fucking great, you know. And you know, like in that Templeman book, he mentions, you know, like David Lee Roth just coming in and being a genius about like taking Jump, and they don't know what to do with it, and they don't think it's a Van Halen song, and he comes up with these lyrics, and it turns out to be their best, you know. What's
which is
it?
hilarious because Dave also didn't want that song, and now he's actually done covers of it of his own. Like Dave
I
didn't want
know,
that song either.
I know. I mean, I agree with Ted's view that it just like they just took a left turn. I mean, not to get off on a rabbit hole here, but you know, Van Halen wasn't a keyboard band, and he was like, you know, this sounds like something that any what do you say, like stadium keyboard player could play, you know. And you know, Eddie was this world-class guitar player that nobody could top, and he was just like stepping away from the guitar to do that. It was kind of odd, but you know what? It was successful for him. So go
I can
figure.
say
I
here's
think,
I'll support an artist to do whatever they want, right? But I
yeah,
can see both sides of it now. But Eddie grew up as a piano player, and he's experimenting. He was being a creative artist. He had already done certain things, so he was bored with it. It'd be like you redoing, Wild Young and Crazy Part Two. You're like, I already did it. At that
yeah,
point, Eddie had done how many albums? He was the king of the world on guitar.
yeah.
You're a musician. You want to be challenged. You want
Do
to do something
something,
different and fun.
anything. Yeah,
So for that, like to me, also, I'll say Jump is not. I don't think it's a bad song. It's just not a song I go to because
yeah, exactly.
I'm excited to it.
Yeah,
But I was happy for the success of it. I get why he'd wanted to do it because it's something different. It's creative. But like, I'll wait
sure.
and Girl Gone Bad. There's some other songs in the album that have some keyboard and not as poppier. They're great. You know.
Was
Um,
it I was I'll wait the one that they stiffed Michael McDonald on the
I think so. That's why.
yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
that one. But like, well, Unchained was written on a piano, so he was a keyboard guy.
yeah,
It's just
yeah. Oh, what's the one that he played on the Fender Rhodes all distorted?
the Unchained, I think, right in the beginning,
Was it Unchained? Oh yeah. That was cool. I didn't even know that was a keyboard,
right?
actually.
So he wrote that originally on piano, I think. So
Yeah.
he's always been doing it. So I mean, that's kind of like where you view as an artist and what you talk about, like what the band is. He didn't care what the band is. He wanted to write a song and how he heard it as an
Well, and
artist.
the other thing is, where they were at, you get put in a box at a certain level, and they
Right.
were in this box like we're 3+1 party band, right? And it's guitar, bass, drums. And it's like, well, I'm not in a box. I'm an artist, like you said.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want, right? So
So that's why I respect him for that. Like to me, I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. It's not my favorite song. I dig why they did it. And it's cool. I don't think it's a bad thing. Um, but it's funny how Dave just didn't want it. How no one wanted it, but it became their biggest song by default.
I know
It's the funniest thing
it's
ever. But
ironic.
so there's not to me there's not as much known about you guys as there should be because you guys came out had the one album and it was like everything changed so fast in the music industry
Yeah.
and there's
Yep.
been I've seen there's been different narratives out there versions and stuff.
Sure.
Maybe you could kind of hit on like the, the formation of you guys, kind of like you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll give you my quick elevator speech on that, not to take
Oh
up too
yeah,
much
whatever,
time.
yeah, whatever you're comfortable with because
So
it's just really just not a lot out there that
yeah,
you've
so
said.
I'm from Minnesota, and at the time, you could actually, if you stuck with it and got a band together, you could make a living at it. And
Hmm.
I started off, at 15 years old, and just went out and started playing clubs, and ended up with a group of guys in a band called the Employers. And we got our 10,000 hours of stage legs. I mean, we just did it the hard way, going all around the Midwest, playing in like, to shitty bars and sometimes packed bars. And slowly we got better and the crowds got bigger. And at a certain point, we were drawing over 1,000 people in these packing these clubs and making really good
Wow.
money. And then the thing kind of fell apart for whatever reason. And at the time or before that, the fall apart thing, I had gone and did some demos with some cats. And yeah, so then I just kind of brought them in and we changed the name at that point to Hericane Alice, but it was building on the following that we got. And so we went and played some shows and we won like best new artist there's a thing called the Minnesota Music Awards, like
Hmm.
Prince and all that kind of music thing. And so we had some prestige rocking for us and we were packing bars. And then that fell apart. Like, I mean, it was only a year and a half lived. And then I had this friend, Ian Mayo, and he had been working with Danny Gill, who was an instructor at GIT,
Yeah.
and another guy, Michael Anthony. And they like had a warehouse down in Long Beach. And they called me up and they're like, you know what? We got these songs, but we don't have a singer. Would you come out? And so I went out and I actually foot the bill and we went in the studio and they may have even had the basics done, but I went in and I just like what we were just talking about with David Lee Roth and
Yep.
everything. I went in, I flew out, and within like a week, I wrote the lyrics, went in, sang the tunes, and we did like a 5 or 6 song demo produced by ourselves. And
Did,
you
did,
know, our music,
I'm sorry. One quick question while we're doing this. Did you say
yeah,
you footed the bill?
for the
So they called
studio,
you.
yeah.
So you actually came in as a new guy. By the way, we need a singer. We also need money for the to pay for it.
I think they might have had basics done actually, and then I was like, "Fuck it, let's go in the studio and
All right.
we rehearsed it up, and they'd be writing, and you know, back in those days you had like a little Sony cassette thing, and you'd record things, and then I just go sit out on the sidewalk in Long Beach and like come up with these lyrics and write them out, and I just kept, you know, like again, iteration after iteration, cross this
Yep.
out, write that in, and then I was like, come on, let's go I'll lay down the tracks. So in the course of, it might have been one or two trips, but it wasn't more than a week or two, the 5 or 6 song demo, which ended up being like Too Late, Dream Girl, Tear the House Down, Shake Shake Shout, all the stuff, the main meat of the
Hmm.
first album was done, and I think that demo was done really well. I can't remember the name of the studio on Santa Monica Boulevard, but anyway, so, and then I was like, oh cool, man, well, I'm gonna go home, and I went home, and like 2 days later Ian calls me up and he goes, you're never gonna believe this. I could give you this. So there was these chicks named the Twins, and you might see them on Sam Kinison videos, but I think Sam was going out with them at the time. They got the
Yep.
tape. They handed it to a friend who's now a friend of mine, Randy Scurvy, who has another thing. And then he handed it to a guy named Glenn Parrish, who was Stevie Nicks' manager. And like 2 days after I got back to Minnesota, Glenn calls me up and goes, you know what? You guys are great. I want to pay for you to come back out here. And I think I want to manage you guys. And I
Wow.
was like, yeah. So I
That's
like just
bananas.
I did the Beverly Hillbillies, man. I loaded up the truck and I moved to Long Beach. And yeah, long story short, 6 months later we had a deal. We recorded at Amigo Studios, which is interesting with that Ted Templeman book. He talks
Yeah.
about going to Amigo. We went to Amigo, and we worked with a bunch of like producers. Glenn kept getting us these uh like development deals. I'm trying to think
Yeah.
of the guy's name. Eddie Kramer like
Yeah.
did a mix on some stuff, and anyway, we got the deal with Atlantic and recorded it, and yeah, so that's the whole story right there, basically. Did I go
So how
too long?
long? No, no, there's no time limit. I'm not.
Yeah.
It's just about hearing the story and the truth, because I hadn't heard it before. And sometimes I try not to do like the soup to nuts meal, but I hadn't
Yeah.
heard that before from you. So to me, I hadn't heard it,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of useless music information. I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard that. How long were you guys together? So you guys were pretty much not really even a full band, kind of like a baby band that kind of got thrown together, and then all of a sudden you guys were a band. You
Yeah,
didn't like,
so the nucleus, I mean, there was some interesting things that happened right there. I had been in that band with Hericane Alice, which was from Minneapolis, and it was spelled regular Hurricane. And the drummer Rusty Miller and I moved out, and we had Michael Anthony was the drummer, and then Rusty and I ended up living in Van Nuys, and I was like commuting to Long Beach, and Rusty's like, man, I want to be in the fucking band, get rid of that other dude, and I just made the play, and Rusty ended up being the band member that was, and so but Michael and Danny and Ian had been working maybe for years on developing all that material. And
yeah,
you know how that writing thing goes. Ian's the writer, but all three of them kicked ass and worked that shit up and
yeah,
recorded it. It was badass. And and then so um the reason why Hericane Alice at the time was called Danger City. That was their band name of their band. Tom McMasters dug us and played us on KNAC and stuff. And but then yeah, so I kind of forced that issue, put Rusty in the band. And the reason why we took the Hericane Alice name was that we got signed, and Atlantic's like, okay, you guys go get a job at McDonald's because we're not giving you any fucking support. And we're like, are you fucking kidding us? We could go back and tour the Midwest and make good money. And so I'm
yeah,
like, screw it, we'll go play. And they're like, you can't play because we're not released yet. And it was just this weird dynamic. But anyway, so we took on the former name to, achieve and go back and have the same crowds back in Minneapolis that I had developed
yeah.
those years. And we did that, and it was cool. And yeah, so it ended up being Rusty was in the band. And then, Rusty got into a little trouble, and we ended up pulling Jackie in post recording of the album. And Jackie was just a friend over the years, and he's just a badass drummer. He's one of those
Yeah.
guys that's like, you get him in the fucking powerhouse behind you, and the band is just like, wow. I mean, yeah. So
Well, you guys are very loud, a very, very loud group, like sonically. Like your
yeah,
voice is very strong. And I mean, as a compliment, I would have loved to seen you guys have a couple more albums, like when you were just
Yeah,
on your legs, like it would have been because you guys were only getting stronger, especially as if
yeah,
you're playing, if you had toured, like you know what I mean, as a band and written and toured a
yeah,
little more, that would have been
yeah,
incredible. It's like what you guys did from that momentum, you know.
yeah. And you know, the voice thing was like, I mean, at the time coming through the 80s, it's like, you know, there's Rob Halford, there's Queensryche. I mean, there's all this really high stuff, which I can just kind of do effortlessly, you know, and the AC/DC stuff. And you know, so I was like, okay, well, this is a competitive sport, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm kind of a competitive person, and I'm like, I got to be better than them guys, you know. So the record is recorded in that way, and with me just, and I was in that kind of form, and I can still have the chops and I'm able to sing that way, but it's just like it's kind of a little bit overdone. Like, and actually, I remember there was a point when we were working on the record. There's a song on the first record called Dream Girl, which is actually, now that I listen to it, you know, it's like one of those things. I don't feel like I wrote it. It just came to me, but now that I look at it, I'm really kind of proud of it, like lyrically and everything and concept wise. But they actually were mixing the record, and Ahmet Erdogan called me from New
hmm.
York. I'm like, oh my God, fuck. I didn't really know how big of a deal that was
Really,
because I
yeah,
wasn't
he's
really that
huge.
knowledgeable. He's like, you know, I love this song. I think this is a hit song, but you're just screaming too much. There's too much high voice stuff in there. And I'm like, but Ahmet, that's like my forte. That's what I do. And you know, I'm trying to compete with Rob Halford and all that shit. And he's like, well, I want you to come out to New York. I'm going to fly you out here. I want you to recut the song, and we're going to just try it a different way. And I fucking said no to Ahmet Erdogan too.
What?
I know. And well, I didn't say no, but it didn't end up happening. But to my memory, I kind of said no. I didn't want to fucking do it. So anyway, long story short, and you know, I know. And then when the record was released, there
That's
was
how
a
you end
big,
up working at McDonald's.
yes. No, that's what I do now.
Ever since no, I'm a manager.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know, man. You know, it's like not like now. You can't just Google Arm Erdogan or watch a movie about him, and you know, I just didn't have the knowledge base. I mean, I got thrown in with like, you know, like the Fleetwood Mac crew. I mean, I went to Mick Fleetwood's wedding, and I'm just kind of walking around, and my manager Glenn goes, "You're gonna get up on stage," because they had a stage, and Stevie Nicks was jamming with Mick Fleetwood and some other cats, and he goes, "You're gonna sing," and I'm like, "No way!" Pushes me out on stage. Stevie's going, "And we have," and it's like under, you know, it's like Ed McMahon and Dick Cavett, or I mean, all these, I mean, like super A-listers, and I'm just kid, and I don't know, you know, I just go out on stage and fucking do what I do. Craziness. You just don't know, you know, but it
There's a
was like,
million years in those couple of years.
what's that? Yeah.
Did you know it was a lot of years in those couple of years?
Yeah. Yeah. And a million stories, you know, and it's like, the other thing is that you're like, that's right, I'm cool. So you got to play it off like I'm cool and I don't care who you guys are, which I've never been really like one to bow to like social
Yeah,
stratification. You know what I mean? I kind of egalitarian in my view, but
I
yeah.
think a lot of people are more not cool, but more laid back than you think they are. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm gonna say, even over time, like if people I've met in the industry, and when I was doing other stuff, I met even back in the '80s. I mean, of course, people are a little more. You're younger, you're a little more brass, and you're a little more ego because
Of
you're younger.
course. Yeah.
But it wasn't the same as like when I think of real ego, I have a hard time. And even nowadays, it's sometimes some of the pop bands are the ones that still have this distance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like rock bands have always been really easy to talk to the fans. They're just a fan
Right.
that has a talent, and their talent is. And I use this example a lot now. If I was the horse guy, if I was an equestrian, and you were really great at making saddles and shoes, you know what I mean? We'd have my horse show, and I'd be like, "You're awesome because you make some great saddles." Like you just do your job is something that
Yeah.
is really enjoyable for a lot of us, and that's what we're talking
Right.
about, your specialty. But beyond that, no one's thinking that they're better than anybody else in the rock world. Well, I've noticed, you know.
Yeah. I mean, because you know what? A lot of us come from humble beginnings, and you can get that thing of trying to like, there's a hierarchy, and there obviously is, because on every bill, it's like, we sold more records, you sold less records. You know what I mean?
But that's
And
economics. That's got nothing to do with the band. I mean, you still have to make a living. If I'm saying I'm an IT guy, if I do something better or less than somebody else, you're
yeah,
gonna get paid accordingly anyhow. That's just the real world. You know what I mean?
it
But
is.
as
It
far as
is
people
real
go,
world, but rock and roll is an elitist organization. I mean, as much as I want to be like this egalitarian, everybody's equal kind of thing, it's like you can't have everybody be equal and then have someone up on stage posing as like the hero guy, the rock star dude. I mean, it's really is an elitist type of scenario, which maybe that's why it's on the decline, because people are less, hero worshiping these days. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. I think I've experienced and I've probably interviewed probably close to 350 people now,
Yeah.
and I've experienced maybe it's like two or three people, and these guys are artists. I never had them on the show. A, I wouldn't do it. I won't pay for an interview also. But these people have yeah, they've acted above it. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's good for you. That's your thing. It's not what I'm going to do. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have other people don't do it, but everyone I've talked to is very cool, always approachable.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's like you can't be, I mean, it's just like that thing of the millionaires with the boat. You think you have the biggest yacht, and then the next guy's got a bigger yacht. It's like, so if you're a rock dude, you can treat people with a snide remark and be, I think that's just shitty people. And a lot of those people don't really make it to the top. You know what I mean? It's so a lot of people are pretty cool, and they've been looking up. There's always someone bigger than them,
yeah, well, they
and
survived too during grunge, and they work through it.
yeah,
It shows that they also have a work ethic, so they're more grounded to begin with
right. True.
to still be around now because they're still working through it, whether they're playing big clubs or not. There was no ego. You know what I mean?
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
I mean, Motley Crue was doing a club tour, and I happen to be privy to some of the financial numbers that like Motley Crue and Poison and all those cats were out doing, like trying
yeah,
to play, and people. I mean, nobody wanted anything to do with 80s
yeah.
rock for about 10 years, and it's like all of a sudden they started coming back, and I know the numbers, and it's like, holy shit, it was bad. It was
It was
tough.
bad. They tried
Poison's
not
not
to be playing together for a while, but when they do play,
Yeah,
they do well.
Brett's got his little thing, and he can pretty much go do the exact same show on his own, but not
He's
for the
been doing it
same.
for 20 years. Yeah, for 20 years, and he makes more of the money. And I think he
Yeah,
has a new single out this year. He's been working on doing something, and he just had the stadium tour. I mean, they got the best reviews ever. I saw them. I saw the stadium tour,
oh, did
and
you see it? Yeah, I saw it too. We represented those guys, and also Vivian from Def Leppard. So we, like, whenever they'd come around, or if we were in
I
town.
was so happy to see Def Leppard. I'd never seen them, and I was very pleased. I thought they sounded great. Um,
Yeah,
Joe Jett was fine, a good show. Poison. I've seen Poison back in the day. They sound the same now, which is
no,
good.
exact same show. It's the
Same
same
set,
set
actually. Yeah,
list.
same set list. But I want to tell you what, though, they can put on a show, and they didn't sound. His vocals didn't sound any different. So the
No,
guitar, like everybody sounded exactly like they're supposed to sound,
you know what the
and they
deal
were,
is? It's fucking entertainment, and they
yeah,
entertain people, and people love those songs.
yeah.
They love
They,
those songs. Look at the cat dragged in, or what,
yeah,
I mean, he's got a great set list,
yeah.
and
He knows his song. His voice is loved. His voice
yep.
is the same. I
And he's a
mean,
great humanitarian.
yeah. Yeah, the whole point is it worked out well, and and having seen Motley Crue in the past before all this other stuff, I actually
Yeah,
left. I actually had to leave. I was like, oh, like I was really disappointed in that show. It got to a
yeah,
certain point where even Vince's voice was like, this is so bad. You
yeah.
know, and it what was this the smoke. Were they burning tires or something? No one ever talks about that. You know what I'm talking about when they come out without smoke. It was like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we all got cancer from just that. I don't know what that smoke. It smelled bad.
I don't know either. Yeah, I mean, some of these cats, I mean, just never have really had like the vocal chops, or the, like, Vince has always been a little pitchy here and there, and
Right, but
I
even
don't
a couple of years back, he still was better. But these past couple of years, it's like he's just got to sit still. I think not like front of the weight, but the extra weight is always hard on you vocally. Like he should
yeah,
have been running and jogging and working on those. Like if he just did his best for his age and sat still, he probably would have been a little bit better. But literally
yeah.
just not doing nothing and just running with that much weight. You're gonna be winded. I'm
Yeah.
winded at my age, going running around. Like it's just
You
not the
know,
thing.
I remember when they first came up with that tour, and again, I have some inside info, but it's like there was there like a makeover TV show or
That was a
like,
long time ago on VH1. He did that. Vince tried that a while back. They had a couple
yeah,
of things. Like they had like a reunion show, and they got
yeah,
together. Then they broke up again, and then around the
yeah,
same time, Vince did a vocal song. He wrote a song with a hit maker, and I think they did like a nose job or something for him or something. It's
yeah, I
been a
know,
while.
man. It's like, yeah,
It's been
and
you know
it's
what I'm
always,
saying. I'm sure it's out
it
there.
didn't
I'm sure some
work.
people.
Whatever they did, it just didn't work.
Yeah. So I mean, he's done stuff through the years, and
Yeah,
all of it didn't go. So the fact that all of a sudden now, after the Dirt came out, they haven't the sound didn't improve at all. You
yeah,
know, but
yeah.
they're huge. I mean, you know, I thought Def Leppard sounded great. I like the fact that Def Leppard came out and did like original music. They opened with a new song
Their
for a
fucking
stadium.
music is badass, dude.
I
And I
know,
don't
but can you imagine
anybody
that?
knows about it. It's just
Can you
like
imagine that
Aerosmith
though?
going like, we're not going to write any more records because nobody fucking cares. You listen to the stuff and it's just like, wow, it's cool.
So let's
Hey,
talk
Sean.
about you. You guys, the joke was you took your 30 years for your sophomore album, and
Yeah,
then you shot and you said cool, which is always great for a dork like me. Is and a lot of people obviously watching a podcast or video cast, what do you want to call it? Is you do behind the scenes with the bands, and people love that. You know, you shot your own reunion piece, and then you did an
I
album.
did. Yeah. Yeah. That was kind of a funny story, but yeah.
Please, well, let's talk about that because that's kind of where I'm going with some of this newer stuff where you are at
Well,
now. I mean,
and on that sophomore album, we actually did write a sophomore album, and uh Max Norman was going to produce, and we'd written and demoed and actually had the studio booked with
mhm.
that original unit of Jackie and Ian and Danny and myself. And then, you know, Jason Flom just kind of went, we're just hair bands are out. We're not going to do this. And they pulled the plug on it right before we went in the studio to record the second
Wow.
album. Yeah. So that was kind of a
Were there
letdown.
any demos or anything done, roughed up out there?
Yeah, and actually, so right before I did this recent thing myself, you know, I called those cats and I'm going, dudes, I'm gonna do a record. So you guys want to
Mhm.
should we release that record? And I've had many record companies going, give us that
Yeah.
record. We'll release the demos. And the guys are like, let's just leave it as it is, basically. Actually, two of them wanted to do it, and Ian was like, yeah, I don't want to put out some shit that's not really recorded well because they were just demos. And he's like, I don't really want to re-record it. And so we talked about it, and it was just kind of a no-go. So I ended up like writing a whole new record and doing it in my
You should
own
release
studio.
it. You should release it only because here's my thought.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
saying
want.
disrespect to the artist, but here's my angle as a fan. You can go online and you can hear example the Aha, right? The lead singer in his prime, one of the best voices ever, right?
Mhm.
The anniversary issue of that album is all demos on the other half of it.
Uh-huh.
Fans love the demos. Even Motley Crue has demos. Like Dr. Phil had all different lyrics, which really messes
I,
you up when you hear it too,
I
because you're
totally
hearing
agree
different
with
lyrics.
you. And you want to know
It's
what?
part
There's
of the process.
yeah, it's part of the process. And there are actually, I think, personally, I think there's some great songs. They're really, really, really good songs. Are they going to become hits right now? No, but you could appreciate the work that went into it. And it's kind of just sad having it sit in the dustbin. Personally, I'd like to release it, but I'll respect their wishes, and I don't really care. It's like, they exist like, and they're private now, but maybe someday, who knows,
You gotta put it out there. You
Okay, well, hopefully, Ian, if you're watching this, you
come on. It's a fan. I mean, it's a fan. You want to hear it. If you make a big deal
yeah,
about it, you know what I'm saying? It's called a demo. Everyone knows
yeah,
it's not you. You're not being held to it. It's a demo you recorded 30 years ago.
yeah.
But here's some
Well,
song
it's
ideas that
actually, you know
your
what? And
fans never got to hear. You have one
it
album
was a
out from
whole
that.
new record. And, Jackie not having been involved with the first record, this was his thing that we wrote too. So we wrote as four guys all together. And yeah, I like it. I would love to put it out there. It's not recorded well, and some of it, some of them are probably like filler tunes that you wouldn't put out, but still have them. They're still there. Yeah. So
Put out to the universe. We need to hear that.
yeah.
So obviously the fact you guys formed as a band, almost as mercenaries, you came in as a mercenary to begin with, to be with the band, and you guys happen to have the same goal, and you're young, and it's easy to get along with somebody in a rock band at the time because you know, It was just hit lightning at the right point. But obviously, as time went on, so when you did the reunion, so obviously you guys were separate for a while, and then you recorded the reunion. Even the reunion, some of the guys, I don't know who said it, they're kind of concerned of what the angle was going to be, what your angle was.
I
I forgot who
know.
said it. You don't talk about, right?
I totally ambushed those guys. I'm
I
going
know, and
like,
I'm not trying to stir the pot, but I was kind of
no,
curious.
no, but
It
it's,
was weird that because you shot it and you put it in there, so I'm asking you. It's weird that you had that in there.
well, yeah, because they were just so freaked out by it. I mean, first of all, it's a little reunion, like, let's get together. And it's so great. I just have to say this every time we get together, and we've gotten together a couple times in the past few years. Well, one time, but it was just, we get it. First of all, Ian and Jackie and Danny are the three funniest motherfuckers in the world. And I mean, they could just have not been musicians, they could have been comedians. And we get together and we are just like in tears. I mean, not kidding, just in tears, like you're on an acid trip laughing. It's so fun to be together with those guys. And it was just fun to put it together. And then in the meantime, it was like, we got the promoter to give us a Learjet and we fucking did this. And I got like a friend of mine and we got a film crew and we're like shooting stuff and interviewing people, but we don't really know what it's going to be, what the narrative is until you start cutting it. And then it kind of came together and it was like, wow, really wasn't about the music so much as it was the hang. And we really loved each other,
Yeah, it's definitely about the relationships. I think all good things have a story and an arc.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a collection of clips and it's a video documentary from the 80s. Otherwise, it's a story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because you're a
And
filmmaker,
yeah, I mean, you want to be invested, and that's why the more the fans get invested in you, just like you, if you're a UFC or a boxing thing, the tail of the tape type of thing.
Yeah.
You get the backstory. You hear they have a kid, they're training in this, whatever. They're fighting for the money. They're fighting. You all of a sudden, like you're 5 minutes in, you're like, I like that person. I can relate. Then you watch the fight. You're emotionally invested into them. If you just saw
Right.
somebody fight in TV, you walked by in a store and you're watching them fight, you're like, yeah, I hope the guy in the red trunks wins. But if you know each of their backstories, more interesting.
Right. Sure. Sure.
So something like you did there puts little dimension into it. Where you're like, oh, but him saying that, you're like, oh, what angle? Like, what's going on? And you start watching it. It's like there's
Yeah.
something else going on, or it's kind of fun. It throws, and it's
Yeah.
very in fact, you put that in there is very open because you put that in there because you could, if anybody would take it out, it would have been you who took that out.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff that got ended up on the cutting room floor, and we had this thing. I almost named this last album "Fucking Bruce" because everybody kept saying that was the story, "Fucking Bruce," and I mean, it's like I had like clips, like 100 clips of like in the elevator, "Fucking Bruce." How come we're not? How come where's our backstage shit? "Fucking Bruce," and it was like I had all these clips, and I was gonna make this whole clip like I don't know, a whatever reel,
That's pretty funny.
but yeah, so that's just kind of the deal. I'm one of those guys who just like imagines things and then makes them happen. I'm sitting in this house right now.
Yeah.
I decided when COVID hit and my job as a booking agent went away, it was like I wasn't going to sit around. So and now it's almost exactly 3 years. I'm just finishing up this big ass house that I just built, and that's what I did. And I've actually learned how to do carpentry, electrician stuff, plumbing. I mean, I have
Wow.
concrete, you name it. Well, it's the longest, biggest project I've ever done, but it's been kind of, I don't know what the word is. It's been a real growth experience for me, but I'm just one of those guys who does shit. I
That
just like
stuff.
want to make a film. I'm going to make a film.
Because I don't know what the date was. Because obviously on the YouTube, so on it you put down was it the same time as that album came out too, right? Was it around the same time?
Uh, what was at the same time?
The album, the video was around the same time as the album, right?
Yeah, yeah, that all came out 2020 spring.
But so what was the nucleus? Because the album's great, so the album was got to be real, but it's kind of short. For something the band has a lot of songs. There's only was like 6 songs.
Yeah, we started with maybe double that, and things kind of fell by the wayside. And one this one's not really appropriate. This one's really not finished. And like I said, I at the time when I decided to do that record, I basically just went out and bought everything I needed to have a home studio. And I'd been working in Pro Tools since like the
Yeah.
90s. So put together a studio, built it myself, and you know, there's a thing. I'm not really the greatest drummer dude. You know what I mean? I'm a singer guy. And so I produced it and engineered it myself. And then like some of the tracks, just like there were problems with the drums. And I don't want to say that's why a few of the songs maybe fell by the wayside that way, or maybe they weren't the best songs. So I just picked the cream of the crop and put it out. And nowadays people just release one song at a time nowadays. It's like you don't necessarily have to have,
Waterfall.
you know,
It's the waterfall thing they call it now. They
what's
let
that mean?
one. They release it one at a time like that. It's like every month or
Oh,
two. It's like a
yeah,
waterfall, and then at the end of the year, this is some of the concepts, especially a lot of rock bands are taking on to. It's very
yeah,
new, and but at the end of the year they'll have enough songs, and then they'll release it as an album or a
as an
CD.
album.
And actually, it make it's smart now because as I think about it out loud, it also gives you a
Mhm.
leeway time because making vinyl unless you're Metallica and you bought the record company, the pressing plant.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
looking at a 6 to 8 month lead time on pressing vinyl. So if you're
Yeah.
doing the waterfall for that year, you start dribbling 2, 3, you know what I'm saying? By the
Flipping
time
them
that
out.
you're done for the album, it's time for the
Yeah,
vinyl to come out and the album's done.
I wonder if you're Metallica, like what the percentage of record sales for vinyl. I know there's connoisseurs and there's people who dig it.
Oh, it's good. The numbers are huge. They're
Is it?
actually I think they sold more vinyl this year than they did CDs.
No way.
I
Huh.
think so.
Well, that's saying something because who buys CDs anymore? Doesn't everybody just stream now? I mean, I don't know.
I buy vinyl.
Yeah.
I'm a dork. I
Yeah.
have lots of vinyl. I have a lot of old vinyl too. I have like the biggest Jethro Tull vinyl. Yes,
I love Jethro Tull, man.
I do
That's
too.
cool.
I love Jethro Tull. They're actually coming. They're coming. It's probably gonna be their last tour.
Ian
What is it?
Anderson? Yeah.
Yeah, it's their
Wow.
last tour. He just has a new
Yeah.
album. I actually got to interview him on the last album. That
Uh-huh.
was a great thing. One of my biggest things to do is get to interview him.
Wow, Sean, that's badass.
That was pretty cool. He's a nice guy to talk to.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have a new album out and they're touring. They're doing like 40 dates in the US. Kind of cool.
Just
Check them
just
out.
kind of that was just a weird, very weird sort of place for rock to go back then when that came out.
It
It was like,
it did,
oh,
but if you think about if you read the history of those guys, like they
yeah,
just kind of learned stuff as they went. And Jethro Tull, if you look back, the early stuff, the best drumming ever. It's the heaviest drumming ever. Like you're always hearing the flute up front, and the flute's really good because it leaves like a melody, like with the guitar.
yeah,
You really break down as a songwriter. But if you pull that back and you listen to like the guitars of Martin Barr and like the traditional drummers they've had, they're just like powerhouses. As a
yeah,
band, they were just a monster band. You
right.
get the flute thing kind of it throws everybody off because if you're thinking
Well, I
one time
mean,
at band camp,
it was, yeah, but it was progressive rock era,
yeah,
right? You had Yes, you had all this stuff, King Crimson. I mean, it was cool progressively, but then it was another twist on it with the flute, and then they sang about these cool things, and one got the transport themselves to like England somehow. I don't know.
yeah.
It was just
It was
weird.
yeah, very interesting band though, like that. A lot of those guys back then. Yes, was the same way with King Crimson. They're all doing something very interesting.
Yeah,
And leading the way was Bill Buford. He was just a monster on drums, and
yeah,
he's another guy. I talked to him. He was a nice guy. Another guy, super nice. You know what I mean? He actually, I'll say this is an example of how nice he is. Bill Buford, yes, King Crimson, like a billion bands, right? I emailed him early on. I didn't have much of a show at that point. Wanted to
yeah.
interview him. He says he replied back to me. He's like, "Oh, sorry, it took a little time." He wrote back to me a long thing. He says, "Hey, I'm doing I'm promoting like a box set, like a retrospective of my life, 3 CDs, kind of a book in it and a poster and everything in it." He
Cool.
says, "It's coming out. Let's do it for that." He goes, "Do you mind if I send it to you? Check it out." So I saw like a download. He sent me the entire thing.
Oh,
It was like a
cool.
poster, it's a book, it's a CD, like months before it even came out. You know, so
Oh, nice.
just that's what I'm saying. It's so nice. Just so many people are so nice. But
Yeah.
another legend. But so a good drummer talk about drumming. But the album though, but the song, gotta be real. They're good songs. You know,
Thank you.
I would
Thank
I would
you.
have been happy to hear a full album, more songs. But
Yeah, me too. I would have liked to have put more out. But it was kind of also a rush too. It was like, wow, summer's coming. And I went and shot these 2 videos and cut them and put them
yeah.
out.
And the other
Highway.
video is Highway Star. If people aren't aware, and for
Yeah.
those of you that are following from home.
Yeah, it's always been a big song for me. Even before Hericane Alice, I did that song and actually, I don't know if you remember a band called Point Blank. used to do it. Yeah, the great band. Oh my God, I love those guys.
Where are they
But
from?
yeah, and I mean, it's Deep Purple, but then they redid it, and then we redid it, obviously. But so I just love the energy of that, and that's usually our ride the motorcycle on stage song, and we just kind of do some fun shit with that. And then, Got to Be Real. I don't know. I just sort of came up with this idea of like doing the painting the whatever the
Yeah,
lyrics
the
and
lyric video, yeah, which is nice because I mean, and also that was also the beginning. There wasn't as many lyric videos either, so you
yeah,
were at the beginning of that also. I mean, now with COVID and different budgets and people recording remotely and just not being able to get in the same area, you know,
yeah.
you know that there's restrictions. So you did it during the most restricted time.
Yeah, and it was a fun little art project, I just, time lapse, and I set up my iPhone with a little stand, and
Yeah,
got like three big rolls of paper and some paint, and I was like, okay, well, let's play the song. I forgot how I synced it up. It was interesting to get it to work. Yeah, I can't even remember, but because it was time lapse, I think I maybe slowed the song down and or
yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Well, there's different timing things you can do, and I've actually made just because I wanted to. I made a couple of lyric videos for some bands, even before I
Yeah.
even told them. And I told them, oh yeah, cool. And I made a couple other afterwards that don't know about it, just because I wanted to learn how to do it. I wanted to get my hands on it, like just like you. It was kind of fun. Something
Yeah.
I would normally do, but I was like, yeah, I'll do it. It's kind of fun just to learn
Yeah.
the
No, I mean,
journey.
absolutely. I always wanted to, and after like the career in kind of my musical career kind of ended for a while there in the 90s, and actually I had a couple kids, so became a father and was doing that, and I worked in the film business for most of the 90s, and so I got real familiar with being on set and how things were made, and did several hundred TV shows and a bunch of. I ended up doing a lot of music videos. And at the time, it was really weird. Like the music business was separated and segregated, so that I was involved with this rock world out in LA, and there was this Nashville side of things, and those cats were coming out to LA to do videos, and I did like Reba McEntire, Vince Gill, Garth Brooks, Clint Black, Faith Hill. I mean,
That was what in
I
the '90s.
in the 90s, I did all their videos, and it was like I was going, huh, who the fuck are all these cats, man? What is country? Nobody likes country. Well, it ended up being huge, and
Well,
and
country
meanwhile,
became the new metal. New country is filled in where metal dropped off.
basically it's just commercial rock and roll, and it's got a twang to it. You got to talk about your truck and your dog and a train, and
Well, and I've talked about this. So I'll tell you. So my thought is the gateway drug for that was Shania Twain and the production of
yeah,
Def Leppard. You had the same production of Shania Twain and Def Leppard at the time, both of them
yeah,
monster albums in two different
yeah,
genres. It
yeah.
almost sounded interchangeable on some sounds. Well,
Mutt Lange,
if you, yeah, but
yeah,
like, so if you like that, if you like Shania Twain, then you're gonna like Def Leppard. You know what I'm saying? And if you
yeah.
like ballads, if you're a ballad person in Def Leppard,
You
you
know,
might like Shania Twain. Like it really felt like it was a not thought of, but it was an accidental crossover piece.
well, yeah. I mean, I don't want it's like that Ted Templeman book again,
Mm-hmm.
to refer back to that, where he talks about, like, I was a producer. I did the Doobie Brothers. I
Linda
did like
Ronstadt.
Linda Ronstadt. I did Van Halen, and I did all these things. I didn't really put my Ted Templeman stamp on them. I
Right.
figured out what the artist was doing and then did it. So I don't want to think I don't think that Mutt Lange did Shania Twain to be like the
No, but
female
that's his sound.
version of Def
He
Leppard.
has a sound though. Mutt Lange has a sound though.
He has a sound, but like, yeah, I think he just got a really good ear for what's a hit song too. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
To
but I
keep
mean,
his finger on
he
that.
knows how to work those. To me, like, and I love the phrase. I always say to serve a song, and Ted did it because Ted was a musician also, so he knew
Hmm.
vocals, he knew guitar, and
Yeah,
he knew which guys sprang in. So that's
yeah,
why the Doobie Brothers and Linda Ronstadt and Van Halen all sound totally different. You know,
yeah,
but some producers have a sound. Sometimes Bob Rock can go back and forth. Sometimes he does and he doesn't have a sound that you can hear. He got known for that Bob Rock sound. That's why Motley Crue went to see him after
right.
Metallica. So I mean, he has a big bombastic sound that he can get. Kind of a
Yeah,
big. I mean, to me, it's like a big clean sound. You know, big
yeah.
live in the room sound. So
Or the Andy Johns. Yeah.
yeah, they all have a certain sound, and some of them, so the artists, the producers at the time, have a little extra reverb. That was their sound on a bunch of albums, at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But the point is, I think, but it crossed over, and that's interesting. You did that because now Nashville is where all the rockers are. Everyone's in Nashville or Vegas.
Well, nowadays, yeah. I mean, I go to Nashville and walk down Broadway, and I feel like just retiring, which yeah, kind of am anyways. But you go into any little bar and you just go, "Holy shit, these guys are so good! What
Yeah,
made me think I could do this?"
well, I've heard
Uh,
about Nashville. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, pretty crazy good. So, what are we going to do musical with you? What's going on with you? There's no way. I mean, clearly you've got the pipe still. You're still writing. You're way too creative. You're way too young to really retire as a creative force.
I know, and it's just like okay. I think I mentioned I'm building this house, and it's like so. I put a couple years into that last little EP, let's call it, extended play. Like nobody knows what
Yeah,
EP
yeah,
means. Um, and I mean, the return on that was, we did a bunch of shows. We kind of, I don't really do club shows per se. Well, I'll go do opening positions with friends of mine in bands, whether it's Warrant or Brett Michaels, and that's kind of cool because we're an arena band and we can hold our own and give people run for their money. We're a great live act.
yeah.
Um, but all that energy and effort, and I was like, fuck, I didn't make shit off that. And so I decided, you know what? I'm just going to put that ambition and talent and creativity aside for now and learn a whole new trade. And, there was no jobs out there. So I just started building and learned carpentry and,
Right.
you know,
But that, I was meaning because at this point, as long as you're not making negative, and if you're at a point where it's not so much about the money at this point. I mean, of course, it's great to make money, but if it's about just
yeah,
making music and not
just being creative and doing what you do
and not
best.
and not being
I
in
agree.
the negative and still not
Yeah.
sacrificing your comfort,
Yeah.
you know, you've got to be writing songs, so you've still got to be having.
Oh, dude, every day. It's just for me, it's just now, it's a thing I do. It's like, I know that I'm just throwing another song into the big ocean. It's like a little drip, the little eyedropper drop into the
Yeah,
ocean every day. But it's like I'm not, and I have some things that are on movies and TVs and stuff, and I get the little publishing checks once in a while. But it's like I just haven't been like going through the motions of like putting them out and recording them, and I probably should. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to do that. And to get back to your question, now that I am almost done with this house, which probably made me more money than I have in music in my whole career, I'm going to, well, basically I'm putting a new group together now, and I've
wait. So
got
wait,
some,
the house made you more money?
yeah.
How'd the house
Oh
make
yeah.
you more money?
Because real estate's a great place to
Okay, so
invest.
yeah, so if you sell it, you're gonna make more money back. I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
okay,
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it was like it's just been like this great investment. And I don't think I'll sell. I'll probably just this will be like a cabin. I'm in northern Minnesota right now, and
yeah,
I'm got like 20 acres on a lake, and they've got this big house, which incidentally is got enough room to like bring an entire entourage of a band up here and record and be isolated and not have like, you know,
distractions.
yeah, I don't know why people go to like Jamaica and record. I mean, I get it. I love Jamaica, but if I was there, I'd want to be on the beach drinking margaritas all day or whatever they drink down there.
Well, every rock story about Judas Priest or Scorpions going to one of those places is usually about the struggle of getting the artist to go back into the studio to write that
Just
out.
go back in the studio because you're just partying and there's chicks and there's booze. And it's like, what you need to do is you need to go away from all that and like wake up every day and go to work. That's how work
Right.
gets done. So I'm not looking to make this into a professional recording studio,
No,
but
but it's fun if you can. But if you can be creative and continue to still either break even or
yeah,
make some money and still
yeah,
be creative, well, why
yeah.
not?
Well, and if you don't have to, hopefully you don't have to worry about making money. And so that's where that brings us to today. And what ended up happening is I got a call from these guys that do the God, what is the Bakken Festival out in Germany?
Yeah.
Yeah, they called and they're like, we'd like to have you. We're doing this other festival, and it doesn't really have a name. It's like the indoor festival or something, and I can
The
get you
new
a link.
one? Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it
and
new?
it's in Hamburg,
Okay.
the 1st of September through the 3rd or 4th. And you know, there are some of my like contemporary sort of artists in my genre, you know, and some great European bands. In Europe, they never did stop
No,
loving rock
they
and
love
roll,
metal. They support it and they keep it
you know,
going.
and so they offered us a really great position, and I thought, oh, cool, I'll do another film and surprise the guys and get the original cast together. Well, Danny actually has, you know, he taught at GIT before I met him for like 10 years. And then he's written like
Hmm.
20 books, and he works for Hal Leonard, and he does like instructional videos, and he's doing really well. He lives in Gothenburg, Sweden, and his kids have all left the house. And he's like, cool, you guys can come over and stay with me for like 2 weeks in my big house, and we'll record and get the band together, and then we'll go play. And I'm like,
Okay,
cool, this is gonna be
that sounds
really
pretty
fun.
awesome.
And well, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter if I say this. And then Jackie just wasn't into it. He's just like, you know, I'm just not into it, you know. So then Ian's like, well, if Jackie's not gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. So then I'm like, well, I have my local guys that I've been playing. I have like another group, you know, locally here in Minnesota, and we play, you know, the Midwest and the gut of the
So you do
country.
play, okay? So, but you're like, ah, I haven't done anything with music because it sounds like you're not doing anything. So you are still actually playing because you still have the music bug in you.
I have been, yeah, over the
Okay,
past 10 years or so. But, you know, since COVID, I kind of parked that thing. But I figured that I would fall back on those guys. Well, those guys, which was a great band that I put together, ended up creating another band, and they happened to be booked on that show. So, like, my two
what?
backup bands are both booked. So I'm like, and now I have the show booked in Hamburg. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I just went out and I started scouring the clubs here in the Midwest, and I found this killer guitar player, Logan Stahlecter. Yeah, that's his last name. Sorry. Sorry, Logan. But anyways, badass guitar player, younger dude, and he's an instructor too. And we put together this group, and we've been rehearsing, and yeah, I got a bunch of like woodshed shows in the
Yeah.
Midwest. We're gonna go out and kind of get
Now,
it.
Hericane Alice, same title. You go by
It's
the
Hericane Alice, yeah. So we're doing a few songs off the first record, a few songs off the second record, and basically going to go to Hamburg and maybe a couple other shows in Europe.
is everybody cool with you using the name? I mean, let's face it, the big thing in rock and roll now is everybody fighting over the name of a band because
Yeah,
either
it's
A,
not.
because they want to tour with it, or B, because they just don't want it being misused because people think they're a part of it. Everyone has
Yeah,
their own reason.
you know, I guess that could be like a little. You know, it could be a little. And actually, Danny might show up because he's in Gothenburg, Sweden. He's not that far, but you know, it's never really been an issue with you know, I don't know. If somebody had an issue with it, I would have never done it. Nobody really cared. So I've been doing it for years. I've been
Yeah.
since like 2007.
Oh yeah, you
I
would have
think.
heard it by now. You
Yeah.
know, if they
I've
really
been
cared.
I
But if they wanted to play the show, they would have just done the show, and you would have been fine with that too. So
totally. And it's not like it's a, you know, at this, and you know, I'm under no misconception about the value of the project other than to myself and maybe the
right.
fans that we have. You know, so and they are too. You know, if it was something where there was money, then there'd be fighting about it. There's not a ton of money, and it's just kind of a thing where I like to play because that's what I do, and go out and do what I do
Yeah.
best. And we've been doing that since 2007. I've had like actually the cats that are in. It's like Guns N' Roses kind of thing. It's like, you know, the guys that are in the Guns N' Roses that you don't know, they've been in the
Yeah.
band longer than the actual
Longer. Yeah.
original guys. Same with these guys, but now they're booked. So I'm putting together another group of cats, and it's, I gotta say, they're really professional, really good, and within the first two rehearsals, we were running the whole set. I'm like, that never happens, you know. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's
so we're
good.
tightened up. We're gonna do some woodshedding this summer, head to Europe this fall, and you know, we're gonna do a record. And I've got my new house and my new studio, so, and I've got a like you said, yeah, I've been writing, and I don't just write in the rock genre. I do finger picking guitar and all kinds of other shit too. But so it'll be fun just to be creative and do that again,
Well, I
you
think
know.
as a musician or an artist or a painter or anything, to just stop. Maybe not do it commercially is one thing. I get that because
Yeah,
whatever. But to
yeah.
say like, there's artists that'll say like, I got off tour and I put my guitar away and I've just never touched it again. I'm never gonna do that again.
I
No,
don't
but there's
get that.
people that could do it. I talked to, and I feel like I'm not named, not, but the point of the whole show is about talking about musicians and stories and stuff.
Yeah.
And when I talked to Fish, former of Marillion, he's a talented, great guy.
Yeah.
He says, "This is it. This is my last tour." And he doesn't do a lot of interviews at all because he has his own thing he does.
Yeah.
So I was like, "But you're still gonna do some other stuff?" He's like, "No, that's it. I'm done. I'm not gonna sing them. But you can record. I just do songs for fun as an artist." Nope, that's it. I'm gonna write books. Done. I'm not gonna sing it. And he's pretty. I believe him because some people you believe. Well, like not like we're done touring. We're gonna sign a thing. Like it's not like that. It's not like our
Yeah.
Kiss's final tour. It's like when he says he's done. I believe he's done. He's one of those guys done. Which is to me, I'm
Yeah.
like, really? You're not gonna get that bug in a few years? Maybe. He's like, nope.
I mean, the
That's
thing that's, I mean, it's a matter of perspective. If you're a person who's like, I always wish that you were talented enough to write and create, but you just don't have it and you never
yep.
developed it because you went and did that other thing that with your life got in the way. Then you look up to people who can do that thing and go, wow, dude, that's amazing. How could you throw that away? Well, it's a creative person. You're like, fuck, man, I've been doing this and it ain't
Yeah.
fucking paying the bills, or maybe I'm too old to do it anymore, and or just my life ambitions are
I
going
think
in
he's done
a
it. He's done
lifestyle.
it. I think. Well, he was still successful. He's still releasing albums on these past tours. I mean, he still has an audience. He's just
Yeah,
literally. I just think he's just done with it.
yeah. I mean, you're like, well, like, so
I
I should
respect
say,
it, but
like,
it's just surprising.
like in reference to like my comment about Jackie not wanting to do this European tour, I
Right.
totally get it and I respect him for that. I mean, you grow and you're like, I'm not gonna go play those songs from 30 years ago and be this rock guy, even though Jackie is one of the greatest fucking drummers I've ever worked with. He's one of the
Mm-hmm.
best in the world, I think. And you know, but I totally respect him not wanting to do it. It's okay with me. It would have been great to. I just really the whole thing was to hang out with those guys because I
Right.
love them. You know.
Well, COVID may change things. Don't forget. I mean, the drummer from Taiketo just tapped out his last one. He also does a lot of promotion stuff too. A lot of people have
Yeah,
alternate careers in music or film or whatever, and a lot
sure.
of them. This is around the age that a lot of them are like either grinding out a couple more years, or they're like, I'm done. You can fill in the spot for me. Like it's just
Right.
between COVID and this age, they're like, I'm done. Especially drummers. It's hard.
Yeah. I mean, Jackie's not just a drummer too. I mean, he's a great drummer, but he's a good singer and he's a good songwriter and he's just got these great creative ideas. It's just he's just like a cool dude. I love working with him. But and I was hoping to work with him again. And you know what? I'm not ruling that out. That could happen.
That'll be
But
awesome. We'll put that out there also. And you guys
yeah.
can celebrate the release of those demos. But
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
this give me a lot of information. A lot of people that haven't heard of you for a while. It's gonna
There you go. Yeah.
fill them up.
I
I want to thank you.
appreciate Sean. I appreciate your reaching out and doing this because yeah, you know what? There's a lot of misinformation and it's kind of a bunch of stale old stuff out there. And I hate to say I'm a bit neglectful. I mean, now in this current like day and age where like everybody like these influencers, it's like,
Hmm.
oh hi, it's me. I'm having carrots for dinner. It's like
Right.
I'm kind of like taken aback because you need to go out and promote yourself. You need to go out there and have some content and have things that people are interested in. And it's like I'm kind of like I don't want to say turned off by it, but it's
No,
certainly
but everyone's like that. Every interview I talk about is that. Even me, I enjoy the creative part. I enjoy talking here. I enjoy editing it and putting it together. When it comes to
yeah,
promoting this afterwards, I'm like,
yeah,
oh, I don't want my
yeah.
picture on it. I don't want to. I don't care. I don't do selfies. I'll do a picture with an artist, or I'm a conduit. I'm like just part. I'm like I guess it's like I'm like the John Goodman of podcasts. There's a quote. It's not about me. You should wear a black shirt. It's like about the show and the artist, and this promotion just is so painful.
Well, I totally agree. And I mean, I don't mind. As you know, I'm chatty, but
No,
the
but this is a little
thing,
different. This is not you actually taking pictures and you know posting
I
it
know,
everywhere.
but you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to be that false. It's kind of a weird deal. And really, I'm more about just the art and the live performance thing and the creativity of going like, okay, bring me a song. And it just honestly comes to you through you
Yeah,
and bam, there it is. And you create this piece of art, right? And that's what all artists do. It's a creative story. And yeah, so I mean, I'm more about that. And it's like, I don't mind doing interviews. And in fact, I love doing this. This is really fun. But it's like, I'm not going to go out there and chase people and try and push things. And,
No. And like, and to me, there's some artists I've talked to. I don't even. There's other podcasts I've done the deep things with them, and I don't need to do it because I'm like, I know it already. For me to ask the
yeah,
same questions over again, I know, and I've heard on other things. It's already out there. There are other podcasts do a better job at it. Like they dig. I feel uncomfortable actually asking a question I already know. But there are
yeah,
artists or content that needs to be brought up in context because even if I know it, it's not going to make sense to somebody driving their car on iTunes or Spotify or whatever, or on YouTube, they're not going to get it. So that's important to relevance
yeah,
the conversation. But to do the soup to
yeah,
nuts on every single artist is not a thing I do.
yeah.
You, there's a bunch of artists that just kind of slip between the cracks. And there's very little
Well, yeah.
information on, but yet there's fans that are streaming your first album and hopefully your second one now. You'll
I
know
just
more.
can't, I can't believe that there's all this interest in Europe. And I mean, all these people are hitting us on Facebook and asking for this, that, and the other thing. And it's just like, well, okay, wow, where's this coming from? And we're
Yep.
just an obscure band that was really good, that didn't really make it. You know, we were close. Missed it by
No, I'm
that
glad
much.
to hear that though, because I didn't know that. Like literally, I have a short list or a short long list of artists that different list of people, whatever. And there's a list of people that are artists that I like that I don't feel just put enough press on or I haven't heard enough about that I would like to put out there and share and get people
Yeah,
excited about. Because if you feel like
yeah,
a personal connection with something like this, you have this talk. Oh, I did hear Hurricane. I did hear Hericane Alice. I did that one song. Let me go back and listen to it again. Like, because it's the
yeah,
tail of the tape. There's that connection now. They
right.
got the backstory now, and it feels more relatable. So, but prior to that, like you were one of the bands on that list. And like, there just wasn't anything out there,
Yeah.
or not.
Well, and you know what? And this serves to legitimize it. This is a podcast, right?
It's
There's,
everything. It's what it's
yeah.
called a podcast because it's also on video. So it's a video and podcast. The
Yeah, I
visual,
know.
the
No, a
visual
lot of
podcast.
podcasts, a lot
Yeah,
of
it's not
podcasts
really.
do video
It's
too.
like saying video and saying film. We're going to film it, but no one films anymore. It's just
Yeah,
the industry word. You hear it, but I know. But as a person in the industry, you're like, this isn't a podcast. It's more of a YouTube show. But I also make it a podcast. But you don't want to be that dork
yeah.
saying that.
I always catch myself because I feel like I'm dating myself if I use the word like I'm gonna film this or I'm
I say it.
videotape this or I'm gonna, you know what I mean? Because it's
Yep.
like nobody even knows what that means anymore. It's almost like an
I'm going to make
anachronism,
a talkie. That's what you're going to say. I'm
right?
going to make a
You know,
talkie.
yeah.
Charlie
It's
Chaplin
crazy.
talkie. Yeah.
Oh man.
Go back old fashioned,
Yeah.
really. But I want to thank you, man. It's been awesome. And
It
I'll
was
have you
cool,
back
man.
again if you want to come back after your album's on. We'll break down your album.
Sure. Sure, man. I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I appreciate your reaching out, Sean. It was cool. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
nice to hang out.
It's fun too.